In this video, I wanted to share some thoughts on consistency of the tension in your hands and how it might affect your playing. Stay tuned. Well, hello, I'm Matt Willis Bagpiper, and on this channel I make videos to make you a stronger and more confident piper. If you like this kind of content, think about liking the video, subscribing to the channel, sharing with any other pipers you might know, and commenting below with any thoughts you might have. I also give Skype lessons if you want more personalized instruction, but more on that later. Have you noticed that when you play a tune that you've known for years and have learned correctly, that all of the embellishments tend to fall naturally in their place? They're played well, they're executed properly, and more importantly, there's very little tension in your hands compared to, say, a newer melody that you're learning? Well, it kind of got me thinking about some stuff. With all of this downtime we've had lately, I've spent more time than normal actually on the practice channel, surprisingly, just going through tune books and trying to find some new melodies, things to play, incorporate into my playing and my repertoire. And I was noticing that I was often missing embellishments that I would never miss in another tune. If I was playing Scott and the Brave, which typically has 18 or 19 C doublings in it, I don't miss any of those C doublings. I mean, yay me, but I've also been playing it for 20 years. But I was noticing in some jigs and reels and other tunes, I would miss the C doubling sometimes when I'd be sight reading through the book. And I noticed that I could tell I was going to miss it. Like I could feel kind of in my hands and in my body that I was going to miss that embellishment, be it a C doubling or a burl or a taralua, what have you. It was like my brain was telegraphing to my hands that it was going to happen. We know if we want a confident and great sound out of our pipes that we have to be blowing and squeezing steadily. And I'll eventually do a video on my thoughts on all of that, and when that's available, it'll be linked. But we all know that between blowing and squeezing, we have to maintain a constant, steady pressure with no dips, no peaks, as steady as it could possibly be. But because we have drones, if we alter our blowing, we're going to hear the drones come in and out of tune. They're going to rise as we oversqueeze, they're going to fall as you undersqueeze, and you're going to hear those dips and valleys. So we're really aiming for that nice straight line of even constant pressure. So I was thinking, why shouldn't that apply to our fingers? When we're playing a melody, be it a new melody or an old melody or any tune that we have on this, we should also feel that we have the same amount of tension or pressure in our hands at all times. And it shouldn't be too much. Now, I often hear you want to have super loose fingering. I'm not sure that's entirely true. I can't speak for everyone. I can only speak for me. If I have a really super light grip on the chanter, I tend to have kind of, loose grace notes. I do want a little bit of a smack in the grace note. I want a certain amount of pressure that's going to be generated by having just a bit of tension in my hand. But on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm thinking somewhere around a 4 is the amount of tension I have in my hand. Nowhere near 10, nowhere near even 8, but certainly not a 1 or a 2 because, at least for me, I find my grace notes don't quite fire the way I want them to sound. But I find when I'm playing a melody I don't know very well, or if I'm sight reading it, as I'm coming into some embellishments that I might not feel as confident with, I notice that that tension in my hand starts telegraphing and becoming a 7 or 8 or higher right before the embellishment fires, and sure enough, it tends to not actually come out. So I started telling myself before I'd start a section, keep that pressure, keep that tension as steady in my hands as I can. Don't let it spike before you get to the embellishment. And if you feel that starting to happen, do what you can to calm it down. So you might need to slow the section down. You might need to slow the embellishment down. You might need to open up the embellishment. You might need to spend a few minutes on that particular note change. Say it's a E to a C doubling and you're getting a crossing noise on the way down, and you know that's one of your, possible points of failure. And so you feel the tension coming in your hands before you start. Work that section out slowly, methodically, and get it so that you can play that and keep that tension in your hand right at a nice steady level. The steadier I can keep the tension in my hands, the more accurate my playing is, the better my embellishments sound, and the more even everything comes out. All of my embellishments tend to have the same cadence and speed rather than some are tight, some are open, so on and so forth. So I want you to look at your current repertoire. Do you have a tune that you know you tend to tense up or miss an embellishment on? Play that tune and feel and think about what's happening in your hands as you approach that embellishment. Are you feeling the tension build up? If so, what would it take for you to not do that? So you're not telegraphing that extra pressure in your hands before you get to that embellishment or that section or that note change or whatever's causing you to miss that bit of business in your tune. Work that out methodically. Go back to the tune and see whatever you can do to keep that nice and level tension, pressure in your hands. Not too much at all, certainly not too little, nice and consistent. And then play like another simple tune. Maybe it's a High Road to Gairloch. Maybe it's a Brown-Haired Maiden. I don't know your repertoire. But play a tune that you know you can play well, and notice in your hands that it should feel nice and consistent. And if it doesn't, even in those tunes, what would it take for you to have the same amount of tension in your hands so that you're not constantly varying the grip strength, how much crushing power you're putting on the chanter, that it's nice and consistent? Many of us have a bit more time right now than we usually do, so take a few minutes, look through some tunes that you already know, look through some tunes you don't know. Notice when you're telegraphing that tension into your hands and try to figure out what you can do to keep it nice and level, nice and steady, and see if by approaching it this way, if you can't improve your current playing and bring in new tunes without some of the points of failure that you might have had without this thought. So we want steady pressure on the bag, not too much, not too little, nice and stable. You don't want to know when you're blowing or squeezing. It should be nice and consistent. And just like that with our hands, we want nice, steady, consistent tension. Not too much, not too little, nice and steady, nice and consistent. Watch a world champion player's hands. You can tell they're not going through points of tension and then release. They're very consistent the whole time. Watch any grade 1 pipe band. Look around the circle as you're watching the video, and you'll see that everyone's fingers have the same kind of light, fluid motion. Not so light that you're not hearing good, consistent gracing out of their fingers, but not heavy and gripping and the claw, nothing like that, that they're all nice and light. Aim to have your fingers look like that. So there's another thing you can try to work on. With tunes you have memorized, go ahead, take your practice chanter to a mirror and watch your fingers as you play. Do they look like world champion fingers or do they not? And if they don't, what would it take for you to have them emulate the look of these top flight players? Just about every top level player, be it a soloist or a grade 1 bands person, they all have very consistent looking fingers. They all move in a very similar way because we're all making the same music on the instrument. So see what you can do to emulate that. If you see your motions are too big, try to bring them down. If you see they're too small, try to open them up just a little bit. If you can tell they're too tight, then lighten your grip a little bit. If you can see that they're too loose, you might want to actually try to add just a little bit of tension. Not enough to, like, again, crush the chanter. But again, consistency on the pressure in your hands. Well, there you go, everybody. There's just a few of my thoughts on what we might be able to do to approach our music and be more confident about our playing by being more consistent in the tension we're applying to our hands. Thank you for watching, everybody. If you got something out of the video, please think about giving it a like, subscribing to the channel, and commenting below with any thoughts you have. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the idea of tension in your hand and trying to keep it very consistent rather than tightening up in certain parts and letting go in others. If you want to go the extra mile, you could head over to my Patreon, where as little as $1 a month goes a long way to help support the channel. As often as I can, I give my patrons early access to my videos, and there are tier level gifts depending on how much you choose to support. If you want a more personalized instruction, I do give Skype lessons. Go ahead and head over to www.mattpiper.com or email me at matt@mattpiper.com, and we'll get you going. I'm teaching people all over the world, and it's fantastic, and I hope to get to work with you soon. All right, everybody, I'm Matt Willis Bagpiper, and until next time, cheers.